Today, using improvised materials and very simple textile methods, we create new relief surfaces. All is in our hands. Breathtaking hats, stylish bags from usual silk and woolen snakes from bear's bindings. Tatiana Lazareva is here today with you. Hello, dear viewers. There comes a time when birds fly from the south, snow mountains sow. And even if don't sow, all the same, the inspiration is a guest which doesn't visit lazy and comes in any season. It has absolutely summer, absolutely winter mood. Today, we will work with very simple method and very simple materials. If you have found on entresol, for example, old acetate silk, a piece of chintz or thin wool, all it will be a magic creative material in our hands. I don't know what will be on hand and you. I have a piece of thin wool and the most different fine textures. I remind that any fabric has two directions, the main and the cope winding. In other words, cross-section. But if we fold a square diagonally, we will have a corner of 45 degrees. Usually, in this direction, do cutting to get bias bindings. The corner of 45 degrees is a slanting direction. Then you take a ruler, its width can be any. You can take a ready template from plastic or a ready ruler. I take here such thin elements. You can take simple a cardboard, and it can be also any width. In other words, you choose the width of a bias binding. To prepare the bias bindings is rather simple. You, by means of a chalk or soap, and a ruler or a template, at first do a marking, and then do cutting using sharp scissors or a roller knife and a special mat. As a result, you will have such bias bindings. I remind that their width can be any, and you can take any material, an old shirt, old acetate dressing gown, and maybe any interesting fabric with relief. In other words, the material is very interesting and fascinating creative process. You see that we have very different bias bindings, and function of things which you will make depends on what creative material we'll use in work. Now we sew our bindings. We fold a binding face inside, and then we lay a machine stitch. Depending on what binding you need, a machine stitch can head for width of a presser. Then you from a fold lay distance equal to the foot and lay a machine stitch. Then this binding is very easily turned out. It's possible to turn out in the most different ways. We use here such interesting hook, a hook for bias bindings. Here it has a fixing hook and very long rod that allows to enter deeply enough into the binding the element and to turn it inside out. So, we have laid a machine stitch and have turned out, and now we will iron our bias bindings. As a rule, take here such small pattern. It's equal to width of your ready bias binding, and we enter it inside. Then the seam as though rolled to one side. And when you will iron it, we'll fix an iron platform directly on the pattern, that the machine stitch will be on the one side. And the second side will be smooth and absolutely equal on width. Now is the most interesting. You can use the prepared material for choice. Can sew on the base the same bias bindings, and can use in one product narrower and wider, lighter and darker. In other words, you can enrich one simple method with your own creative finds. By the way, there is a very simple and fast method which helps to get very long bias binding from a fabric square. It's possible from two contrast triangles, but triangles should be necessarily equilateral and right. You half a square and get two right triangles which sew lengthwise, in other words, on legs. So, if you sew two triangles on legs, you will have the rhombus. On the rhombus, you necessarily iron the seam which have laid and necessarily do a marking for width of the bias binding. This longitudinal marking will help you to join the sides of the rhombus with the shift, exactly for width of a bias binding, and then, with the one cut, you divide the cylinder or long bias binding. In other words, you need to have one binding, without connecting small lines of bias strips, but at once. The single seam is very convenient. I'm sure you will like this method. I have specially chosen not straight line, but slightly curved. As Tsvetaeva said, ugly all that is ugly in the wind. Therefore, we have set our line to ripple a little. By means of a chalk or soap, you do a marking. It depends on your mood. And then we will fill with the machine stitch this field, stitch in an absolutely random way our prepared bias bindings. Here is what you will have as a result. I took the closest textures, because it will be a bag. It should hold the form well, therefore all fabrics are dense. You see that I have made such spontaneous marking, have stitched bias bindings, keeping tautosity and waviness. Here it's very important, if you feel small fragments, their seams are blocked by a cross-section direction of a bias binding. You can create your illusion and your relief. Training is finished. And having begun to enjoy, you can try to make of heavy fabrics, for example, a plaid, or a bag, or the worn jacket. And if you take chin strips and stitch them on a jeans fabric, you will have very original cuff, a collar, a waistcoat. Mark the dummy. On it, there is interesting enough evening variant, which is also created by means of this simple method from silk bias bindings. And one more small method. We will make a hat. It will be also from bias bindings, and we prepare all just in the previous variant. Only before grinding off, I have put in small narrow strips of a synthetic winterizer. Therefore, the binding itself is filled and elastic, because the headdress should hold the form well. And now is the most interesting. You lay out sewing with a seam over the edge or a seam on bands of details. You can make assemblage by any way convenient for you. The most important thing is that all layers which you will lay correspond to the form of your pig. And having finished work at any stage which will suit you, take off already ready hat, in other words, it doesn't need to be sewed, and simply take it, turn out, and go to the mirror and try on. And some words about a pig. If you have a favorite hat of the interesting form which is good for you, you can, when it has already passed out of use or no longer satisfied you as a hat, use it as object for new creativity. You very closely stuff it with sawdust or rags. Then, from below, sew a bottom, and you have very dense pig, which you can use for the most different kinds of works. From the top, I have also warmed it with small fragment of stockinette, that it will be convenient to pin up pins. By the way, just mastered method of modular assemblage allows us to experiment with the most different materials. First of all, if assembling a hat from narrow strips of a bias binding with a synthetic winterizer, you can easily replace them with cords of the most different diameter, the most different quality. It can be a linen braid, and can take usual ribbons which you have and to combine them between themselves, because if it's a smooth ribbon and the pleated material, you can get the unusual and interesting texture. And once more, if you want using the bias bindings and here such cylindrical sealant to make a rug, it's better to make it manually. You, by means of a bias binding, wrap a header and simple manually with any secret seam at first, cover all plastic surface, and then, just as we assembled the hat, can make an interesting interior thing. Good luck to you! The masterclass is finished. There are no ugly women. There are women who for some reason don't want to be beautiful. And the external beauty is even more expensive and more valuable if it's supported by inner beauty. Good luck to new meetings. Today with you there was Tatiana Lazareva.